All right, guys, so this is only a 15-minute video, so I'm going to show you that we can actually do this pretty quickly if you just actually think about what you need to do beforehand. So remember that I'm trying to answer the question about whether or not there was prejudice during the Great Depression in the 1930s, and I have to provide evidence to support whether I agree with that or not. So there was prejudice during the Great Depression, or there wasn't, and I need to have a line that shows that there was or there wasn't. Now, to make my job easier, as I read, I'm going to highlight things that show that there was prejudice or that there wasn't prejudice. Okay, so I'm going to read this article out loud. Follow along with me. I want you to kind of be thinking about what you're going to answer as you do this. So have you ever had to move to a different town before? Maybe you just moved somewhere new, or maybe you have always lived in the same place. But can you imagine having to move to a new place every few months? This is what Mexican migrant farm workers had to do in California in the 1900s because they worked in fields and farms. They had to move several times a year every time there was a new crop to harvest. Who worked in the fields? Many people of Mexican descent had lived in California for a long time before it first became an American state in 1850. The territory used to belong to Mexico, and many residents did not leave when the United States bought the land. However, even more Mexican immigrants crossed the border when Mexico experienced a revolution in 1910. The revolution put some in danger, and they fled for safety. The revolution also caused an economic downturn in Mexico, and many workers realized they could earn more money in the United States than they could in their home country. Okay, so nothing standing out to me yet to highlight, nothing showing prejudice. Remember, prejudice is prejudging based off of ethnicity or gender or anything. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything yet. Workers continued to move to California and other Southwest states throughout the 1920s. The U.S. government set up a program to give immigrants short-term work visas. The program was designed for workers to come to the U.S. for a short time, just long enough to earn money to send back to their families. Well, right there doesn't show me that they were prejudiced. Okay, it kind of shows that they could work hard and they could get their thing. Okay, so I'm going to highlight in yellow if it shows that there wasn't prejudice. Okay, most workers relied on these visas to stay in the country, but some stayed long enough to earn their citizenship and have children. People who were ancestors were born in Mexico. A visa is an official document that legally allows someone to be in another country for a particular amount of time. So when the Great Depression hit in the U.S. in the 1930s, unemployment across the U.S. rose to 25%. Many white Americans grew upset, believing that immigrants were taking their jobs. They blamed the Mexican workers for the fact that so many other people did not have jobs. Okay, so that shows me that there was some prejudice. They're blaming. Okay, they, being the Americans, blame them. And I'm going to do this in blue to show that there was prejudice. Local and even state governments began to deport anyone who looked Mexican. So just looking Mexican means that they got deported. So that's prejudice. Okay. Police did not bother to check if the people, if they were moved, were citizens. The workers who remained in the states often became migratory workers. They had to move around a different crop as different crops came into season, so they could be employed all year round. Life as a migratory worker in the 1930s was hard. Even though agriculture in California depended on migratory workers, they made the lowest wages in the country. Okay, so they're making lower wages just because they're migratory. Farm owners did not treat their laborers with respect. Most farms did not have bathroom facilities or water for the workers to drink, and there were no place to wash the dangerous chemicals off their hand. Families moved too much and did not make enough money to own a house. So they usually stayed in makeshift homes right next to the fields. They built these homes out of whatever they could find, including scrap wood, cardboard, canvas, or tin cans. Although it was technically illegal, some children had to work in the fields alongside their parents for long hours. Even when children could go to school during the day, they had to change schools so often that it was very difficult for them to learn. The U.S. government started programs to help families hurt by the Great Depression, but few of these programs applied to agricultural workers. The one program that brought some assistance was the Farm Security Administration, which set up living camps and provided food and medicine to migratory workers. They separated Mexican and Mexican-American workers from whites because they did not want racial tensions to cause problems at the camp. A few Mexican workers tried to organize strikes and protest during the Depression, but they did not succeed in improving working or living conditions. After the Great Depression ended, life did not get much easier for the migratory laborers. However, change began when Cesar Chavez first created a union to farm workers in 1965. The National Farm Workers Association, Chavez, and the NFWA wanted higher wages and better working conditions for all laborers, Mexicans and whites alike. The Great Depression was the worst economic downfall in the U.S. history. Record numbers of people were unemployed and living in poverty because of the Great Depression in the 1930s. Farming, growing crops, and raising livestock. Strikes are a way for workers to unite. All of these are just definitions, so I'm not going to sit and read them, okay? One of Chavez's most famous campaigns was a strike and boycott against grape growers in California. It began in 1965 when fruit companies refused to meet the demands of their workers. The workers went on strike and would not agree to keep working until they were paid better. To raise awareness and pressure the fruit companies, Chavez organized a 300-mile march to Sacramento, the capital of California. He also encouraged consumers around the country not to buy grapes. Finally, in 1970, the grape growers agreed to give their workers better wages. Today, Mexican immigrants or people of Mexican descent still make up a large majority of farm workers. In 2005, a survey found that 53% of these workers were undocumented workers. 21% were permanent residents and 25% were still full U.S. citizens. Most farm workers still make less than $10,000 per year, especially since many are paid per bucket of fruit they pick rather than per hour. Despite some improvements from the 1930s, being a farm worker is still a dangerous and difficult job. Many organizations and politicians are still working to improve the lives of migrant laborers across the country. Okay, so I'm going to come back up here, and we wanted to say whether there was or wasn't prejudice during the Great Depression. Now remember, I labeled this in two different colors. The yellow was that there was not prejudice, and the blue is that there was. Now as I look through here, there's a lot more blue than there is yellow, which tells me that there's more evidence to support that there was prejudice during the Great Depression in the 1930s. So that helps me pick my answer for the thesis statement. So according to the article Mexican Migrant Workers in the 1920s, it stated, okay, we need to find the quote that best shows prejudice. So I'm going to go back up here to all my blue lines and see which one I think is the strongest support of showing prejudice. So they blame the Mexican workers for the fact that so many other people did not have jobs. Local and even state governments began to deport anyone who looked Mexican. That to me, right there, hands down, is prejudice, just because of how they looked. You're prejudging them based off of how they looked. They could have been U.S. citizens, and they were still deported. Okay, migratory workers made lowest wages. Okay, they didn't treat them well. Okay, they didn't make enough money to own houses. They had programs to help families who were hurt, and they separated them. For me, this line right here, local and even state governments began to deport anyone who looked Mexican, is a way stronger piece of evidence to show prejudice than anything. Okay, and so I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to put where I was going to put my direct quote. I'm going to type word for word what I put. Now, I'm going to make sure that people don't know I just copy and pasted that, right? So I'm going to make it all the same. Ladies and gentlemen, that line that I chose fits perfectly. So this is what I need. And I got to take away an extra period. Sorry, I put an extra one there. There was prejudice during the Great Depression in the 1930s. According to the article Mexican Migrant Workers in the 20th Century, it stated local and even state governments began to deport anyone who looked Mexican. That line proves prejudice. That's what I want my evidence to prove. I want it to go back and actually show what I'm saying to be true. I'm saying there was prejudice, and so I have to prove that there was. Now, the next step that we're going to discuss tomorrow is elaboration. We're going to do a little bit of practice with elaboration. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before I end this video, I did that in 9 minutes. Okay, I read that article, I highlighted things that answered my question, and then I wrote my thesis and my evidence. Ladies and gentlemen, this part right here is the RAC of races. We're almost already done, and it didn't take more than 9 minutes. Okay, if you're really truly working hard, it will be pretty quick. Now I'm going to hurry and switch things here, and I want to show you where your assignment is for this particular for our evidence practice. So you're going to go to Granite's website, and you're going to scroll down here to Canvas, which you're already there because that's how you got to this video. But when you're there, okay, here on the home page, today is Tuesday, March 24th. You just watched this video. Part 2, what I'm recording right now, will be right there when we're done. And step 2 says, after watching the videos and reading the article, click the link below to access the assignment. You're going to click right here on the blue link, and it's going to take you directly to the assignment that you need to do. Now, yours looks a little bit different than mine, but in order to actually do the assignment, you're going to click the submit button. There's a little blue submit button right up here. You're going to click that, and it's going to open, and you're going to see the exact same thing that's right here, as well as at the very bottom, there's going to be a text box. Okay. In that text box, you're going to answer the questions. So the first part says, take the given quote and the listed source and cite it correctly. So here's the quote, here's the source. You're going to write me a citation, just like we did in the first video, just like we did here. Okay, so we took the quote and the source and we cited it correctly. You're going to do that 4 or 5 times. I don't know why it says number 1 on all of them, but it does. Okay, then the next thing says, read the following article, and you're going to answer the question that's here. Okay, and you're going to do a thesis statement and find the best piece of evidence that supports that thesis. And that is what you're going to submit. Okay, please email me if you have questions or concerns. Tomorrow we're going to go over elaboration and conclusions. And then on Thursday and Friday, we're going to do full-on practices with more articles. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and fingers crossed that I'll get to see you guys soon. Enjoy.